Good day, class! Welcome to Introduction to Logic. Today, I'm going to discuss to you fallacy as a continuation of our part 1. Specifically, we're going to start with fallacies of weak induction, or fallacy which has evidence which is not sufficient. Let us start with appeal to unqualified authority, or argumentum ad verecundiam. The appeal to unqualified authority fallacy is a variety of the argument from authority and occurs when the cited authority or witness lacks credibility. There are several reasons why an authority or witness might lack credibility. The person might lack the requisite expertise, might be biased or prejudiced, might have a motive to lie or disseminate misinformation, or might lack the requisite ability to perceive or recall. Now let us have the example for the appeal to unqualified authority. Appeal to unqualified authority example. Dr. Bradshaw, our family physician, has stated that the creation of muonic atoms of the deuterium and tritium hold the key to producing a sustained nuclear fusion reaction at room temperature. In view of Dr. Bradshaw's expertise as a physician, we must conclude that this is indeed true. This conclusion deals with nuclear physics, and the authority is a family physician, because it is unlikely that a physician would be an expert in nuclear physics. The argument commits an appeal to unqualified authority. Now let us have another example. James W. Johnston, chairman of R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, testified before Congress that tobacco is not an addictive substance and that smoking cigarettes does not produce any addiction. Therefore, we should believe him and conclude that smoking does not, in fact, lead to any addiction. Based on the argument, if Mr. Johnston had admitted that tobacco is addictive, it would have opened the door to government regulations, which could put his company out of business. Thus, because Mr. Johnston had a clear motive to lie, we should not believe in his statement. Now let us proceed to appeal to ignorance, or argumentum ad ignorantiam. When the premises of an argument state that nothing has been proved one way or another about something, and the conclusion then makes a definite assertion about that thing, the argument commits an appeal to ignorance. The issue usually involves something that is incapable of being proved or something that has not yet been proved. Now let us have the example for appeal to ignorance. People have been trying for centuries to provide conclusive evidence for the claims of astrology, and no one has ever succeeded. Therefore, we must conclude that astrology is a lot of nonsense. Conversely, the following argument or the next argument commits the same fallacy. People have been trying for centuries to disprove the claims of astrology, and no one has ever succeeded. Therefore, we must conclude that the claims of astrology are true. The premises of an argument are supposed to provide positive evidence for the conclusion. The premises of these arguments, however, tell us nothing about astrology. Rather, they tell us about what certain unnamed and unidentified people have tried unsuccessfully to do. This evidence may provide some slight reason for believing the conclusion, but certainly not sufficient reason. Now let us proceed to fallacies of grammatical analogy. To start, let us have composition, or the fallacy of composition. The fallacy of composition is committed when the conclusion of an argument depends on the erroneous transference of an attribute from the parts of something onto the whole, meaning specific to the whole. In other words, the fallacy occurs when it is argued that because the parts have certain attribute, it follows that the whole has the attribute too. And the situation is such that the attribute in question cannot be legitimately transferred from parts to whole. Now let us have an example of fallacy of composition. Maria liked anchovies. She also liked chocolate ice cream. Therefore, it is certain that she would like a chocolate sundae topped with anchovies. Another example, each player on this basketball team is an excellent athlete. Therefore, the team as a whole is excellent. Each atom in this teacup is invisible. Therefore, this teacup is invisible. Sodium and chlorine, the atomic components of salt, are both deadly poisons. Therefore, salt is a deadly poison. So based on the given examples, you will see that the specific has attributes. And in the conclusion, it becomes the whole, which makes the fallacy of composition. Because the specific can be true, but the totality cannot. In these arguments, the attributes that are transferred from the parts onto the whole are designated by the words. For example, the first one, Maria likes, excellent for the second one, invisible, and deadly poison, respectively. In each case, the transference is illegitimate, and so the argument is fallacious. Now let us proceed to the next fallacy, the fallacy of division. It is the exact reverse of composition. As composition goes from parts to whole, division goes from whole to parts. The fallacy is committed when the conclusion of an argument depends on an erroneous transference of an attribute from a whole or a class onto its parts or the members. Now let us have the example of the fallacy of division. Salt is non-poisonous compound. Therefore, its component elements, sodium and chlorine, are non-poisonous. This airplane was made in Seattle. Therefore, every component part of this airplane was made in Seattle. The Royal Society is over 300 years old. Professor Thomson is a member of the Royal Society. Therefore, Professor Thomson is over 300 years old. So as you can see in the example of the division, each premises has its own attributes, from the whole to the specific. But the whole does not determine that the specific can be true to them. In each case, the attribute designated respectively by the terms non-poisonous, made in Seattle, and over 300 years old is illegitimately transferred from the whole or class onto the parts or members. It is being made as policy because, for example, if the airplane is made in Seattle, not all its part can be or should be made in Seattle as well. Now let us proceed to another kind of fallacy. Fallacy of ambiguity. Fallacy of ambiguity, let's have equivocation. When we say equivocation, it is two same words with similar pronunciation and similar spelling but having different meaning. The fallacy of equivocation occurs when the conclusion of an argument depends on the fact that a word or phrase is used, either explicitly or implicitly, in two different senses in the argument. Such arguments are either invalid or have false premise, and in either case, they are unsound. Let us have an example of equivocation. Equivocation example. All trees have barks. Every dog barks. Therefore, every dog is a tree. The cited example is fallacious in the sense that the word barks in the major premise denotes the outer covering of a tree. while the barks in the second premise refers to the harsh sound uttered by a dog. Now let us have another example of equivocation. The sign said, "Fine for parking here." So since it was fine, I parked here. The cited example is fallacious in the sense that the word fine in the major premise denotes a penalty for parking, while the fine in the second premise refers to being okay or possible. Now let us recap all the fallacies we have mentioned in this video. We have appeal to unqualified authority or argumentum ad verecundiam. We also have appeal to ignorance or argumentum ad ignorantiam, composition, division, and equivocation. And that's all for fallacy, and that's all for introduction to logic. Thank you very much for listening.